Karl Chan, welcome to Listing with Leaders. You are the CEO of Laserfiche, found at laserfiche.com. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
So, Karl, you're a rarity. I interviewed you on Authority Magazine, and what caught my attention was that you have been with the same company for 30 years, and you started out when the company only had 8 employees, so you were the most junior guy, and today you're the CEO. And as you remarked just a moment ago, what's even more remarkable is you have survived in a family-owned business.
Yes, that is correct.
So tell us a little bit about your backstory and how all this came about.
So I'm actually coming up on my 35th year at Laserfiche.
Wow.
And so as I was growing up, my peers would be playing video games, but I was actually more interested in winning, but I didn't want to spend all the time playing. So I was end up trying to hack the system. And from there, I got really interested in software and figuring out how things work. And eventually I ended up studying engineering, and I ended up at a large aerospace company. But in that large company, I felt whatever I did, I was not making an impact. I could just not come to work and the world would still continue. And so when this opportunity came out, that there was this company called Laserfiche doing a paperless office, digitizing paper, converting them into digital systems, I felt that was my calling. And so I joined. Like I said, my career here is a little bit unconventional. People say, why do you keep on? Are you still there at the same place? And sometimes people who stay at the same place stay at the same job, but I actually do hop from job to job. The only difference is I stayed at the same company. And luckily the company grew, from a small startup to this large multinational company where we have offices in different countries. And I was able to move from job to job and grow with the company. And I got lots of different positions in all different departments. I worked in development, I worked in IT, I worked in support, I worked in accounting, I even worked a little bit in marketing. I really worked my way up, so to speak.
In the most classic way possible. And I imagine that you were trained as a software engineer, but you've had to learn a whole bunch of other skills along the way.
I think that most of the skills is just really problem solving, whether they're in software and they're in hardware, or they're just people problems or business problems. It's really just problem solving.
And do you find that when you're talking about problem solving in sort of the generic way, it strikes me that you have to develop different skills to solve different kinds of problems.
Yeah, and it does help to work in those different areas to actually understand a little bit about, when I did a little bit of accounting, I go, oh, things don't work as I thought it worked. You have to learn that part. And then when you go to marketing, you go, oh, it's different than development, and everything is different.
So whenever you went into a new role, it sounds like you had to learn the business of the department that you were in, the division you were in, and then that allowed you to apply your problem-solving skills once you understood what the business was all about.
Yes. So it really is almost like jumping to a different company and starting from the bottom up again. But
was that ever intimidating for you?
I felt that in some cases, when the opportunity opened up, in the beginning, I felt that, did I really volunteer for that position? In some cases, I felt really comfortable in my current position, and I felt that the door was opened and people just shoved me through the door.
Or off the cliff. Right?
Or they had more confidence in me than I had in myself to be able to accomplish the job. And so that's it was great that they had my back and said, yes, I know that this position has opened up. I know you can do it, even though I felt that I may not be able to do that. And in times it was really scary to actually go into something completely different.
I have to say that you got to have a lot of courage to be able to do that, and a lot of faith in people around you and in yourself to think that I'm going to figure this out.
I think it's more faith, because I worked with the founder of the company, who was the founder of the company was a woman called Nailing Wacker, and she built this company from nothing. And so so a lot of these opportunities, she says, I think you're the best person for this job. And it was hard for me to say no.
Got it. You don't say no to the founder.
Yeah, I didn't say no to the founder.
Even if you think, well, I don't know whether I can do this or not.
There were a lot of times which I thought she was wrong. And then in the end, I found out I was wrong. So eventually I got to the point where I had faith in saying, oh, yeah, she really does know a lot more than I do.
So today you've been with the company for what, 35 years now, and you're the CEO. You've seen a lot. What gets you excited to get up in the morning and go to work?
So what Laserfiche does is it does a lot of digital transformations for company. It produces a software which helps move companies from the paper age into digital age. Like I said, we started out with document imaging, and that's what got me hooked into it. But eventually we moved into records management, document management, a lot of workflow, and now we're doing a lot of office automation. So we're taking these companies into the digital age. And what really gets me excited is that all these companies that we're helping out, an example would be the city of Long Beach. The Long Beach Police Department has a program called the GUIDES program. They call it the Government User Integrated Diversion Enhancement System. So this is a big, long acronym called GUIDES. And so it started out having the police, because of all homelessness in the city, their police has really become an extension of social services.
Right.
It is very expensive to take a person and put them in jail. The cost of housing a person is almost the same as putting them in, a 5-star hotel. It is a very expensive thing, and it's actually a lot more cheaper, and it's actually better for the person to actually put them into a shelter or some kind of halfway house. So there's a diversion in which they can move them from the justice system into social services, but the police must be empowered to be able to do this. So our software helps, build this application, which gives the law enforcement personnel access to resources like whether this person has been moved into a diversion facility, or they have scheduled an appointment, or they left, or they missed it, and they can come up and say, oh, I've noticed that you've been scheduled to go to this facility, but you missed your appointment. Can I take you there instead of putting you in jail?
So it's in that particular application, you've got a database, presumably a database of homeless people. As law enforcement encounters homeless people, they enter data, and then you can track really what's
you're going to track. It's like their case information that is tracked in the system to help them figure out. So when you divert them, it's not just any facility, that's fine, because there are a lot of resources within the city. Right. Some handle mental illness, some just handle homelessness, some handle substance abuse. Right. Some have 3 beds open, some have 2 beds open, some are men only, some are women only. So you really have to be able to divert them to the right facility.
And the software application that you people have developed.
And to be able to have that thing accessible from a mobile device, that's really powerful.
Wow.
So that's the eventual dream of this, that we're getting into that to be able to do something like that.
Uh-huh. I'm just curious, how many employees does Laserfiche employ?
A little under 400.
Wow, that's a crowd. And you say that you've got offices all over the world.
Yes, we have offices in Shanghai, we have office in Guadalajara, in Toronto, in Ireland.
Hmm. When you as you think about your long career, what is it that you think that's been unique about you that you've been able to bring to the table that's made you successful and also made the company successful?
I feel that I do a lot of long-term planning. So I'm trying to say, what's the problem I'm trying to solve, not for today, but what is the actual root cause of the problem that we're trying to solve, and actually try to solve that big class of problem.
So that strikes me as being analytical. You have an analytical ability to look at root cause of problems, and then from there start developing solutions.
Yeah, and usually my solutions are, yes, there may be a short-term solution, but we also have to put a long-term solution to actually solve this and actually move the system into a higher level.
Right. Don't want to just treat the symptoms. You want
Yeah, I talk about, we're not just putting lipstick on a pig, but we're trying to make pigs fly. That's what we're really trying to do.
and that's, I take it, that's a philosophy that is that you try to imbue throughout the culture of the company.
Yeah, we do a lot of digital transformation, like I mentioned,
Mhm.
and there are a lot of software out there that are talking about digitization and automation, and there's this fear of people losing jobs over this. But our philosophy is that we're basically we're tackling human-centered digital transformation. Our job is to actually improve the life of the people that the software is meant to serve. So an example, a very interesting story was, I had a customer once a couple of years ago, came up and said, look, this is what we automated. We automated our Secret Santa process, and we used your software to do that. And so when I first heard that, I go, wow, that seems to be a complete waste of time. There's so much things that you can automate in businesses, and you automated your Secret Santa process. How is this even? Why is this even important? And it took me, it just kept on bothering me. And overnight, I was thinking about it. Then all of a sudden I realized, if you had a problem and it was directly affected the software that was directly handling the line of business, your IT would be directly on it. But the further and further away you get less and less resources. So if you were at a university, or you're handling student services and you couldn't bring in students, the system was down, someone would be on it immediately. But if it was an adjacent service, or 3, 4, 5 levels away, something breaks down, they would say, file a ticket, and you wouldn't hear from them ever again. So the Secret Santa actually represents a process to a specific work group that's really important to this group of people. But it may not be in line with what the main company's line of business app would be. And so if these people can actually automate the processes that are important to them, if they can automate the Secret Santa process, then it shows that they are enabled or empowered to automate the processes that are important to them. And they hold their own, they control their own future for that. And they don't have to rely on IT.
That is amazing. The fact that what is even more amazing is that they were able to take your company's software And it,
Yeah, and
something that's,
I've heard the same thing with fantasy football leagues at
oh, yeah,
work where people do that too. And so, these weird one-off stories that are it's inspirational to see that.
yeah, I can see that. Um, this, you know, when you see applications like that, these are things that you would have never thought of as you develop the software. And I can see that it would be inspirational to see people taking this tool that's been created and use it in ways never imagined, but that, to your point, is really empowering. That's a pretty,
Yeah. So you talk about Secret Santa, that is a complete edge case. We have other cases, like we have like logistics companies where they automate they digitize their electronic flight bags where the flight routes, the cargo, and everything else is done that, and the pilots access the information through iPads. And pilots all love that because they don't have to carry around big stacks of paper anymore.
right.
So
Right.
that's a business application, but you might tell people and people says, okay, that's not that inspirational. But when you start moving off to the Secret Santas and fantasy football leagues, it's
Well, I can tell you as a pilot, being able to download and have on my iPad all of my flight plans, all of my charts, weather, everything you
yeah.
on my little iPad. Compared to the old days, I started flying in 1977, yeah, 77, 78, and everything was paper then. And you
Yeah.
keep two suitcases.
So that type of story, which we had a customer, a major logistic company, and I was surprised that they were still doing paper until just recently.
And then they got the tool that allowed them to get rid of the paper.
Yeah, and then they just went electronic, I think, within the last couple of years.
In our Authority Magazine interview, you talked a lot about communication and the importance of communication. Tell me more about that and the importance of listening in your work.
So I think my entryway into learning about listening was I talked about having a lot of different jobs. So my first job here was actually in coding because they said, okay, you're a programmer, you started coding. But since the company was very small and I ended up bringing my lunch in for work. And so when everybody left, I was one of the few people in the office. And so they said, well, since you're here in the office, why don't you man tech support during lunch? And so I said, okay, how bad can that be? But, sitting in for tech support during lunch is tech support is a very difficult job. I empathize with that. When people call in tech support, they're not calling, say, have a great day.
Right.
The software is working perfectly. Just stop by to say hi or stop by to say thank you. People have problems and they have, they're usually at their wits' end before they start calling you. So,
right.
Listening to the problems on the phone, and back then there was no video calls. That when I was picking up the phone, I was literally picking up the phone and trying to work people through problems. And a lot of times it's a lot of emotion that you have to get over before you start solving the problem. So that's my introduction into listening on the job.
How did you tell me how you learned how to deal with people's anger and emotion and frustration?
A lot of that is recognizing that it is emotion first. There's in tech support, there's the emotional part as well as the technical part. And you have to solve the emotional part first before you can get to the technical part. If you end up jumping to the technical part first, and you do not solve the emotional part, you're going to have a hard time running through trying to solve the problem.
I think you snuck into my graduate class up at Pepperdine.
Oh.
That's what I teach my graduate students I teach at the Strauss Institute of Dispute Resolution up in Malibu.
Oh.
And in my class on decision making, I teach my students de-escalate, then problem solve. Do not
Okay.
problem solve first. You've got to de-escalate before you problem solve. And you do that by listening to emotions.
So a lot of this is like on the job, you learn it. Because I remember Noll, when the founder of our company, she said everything she learned about customer service, she learned from her waitressing job during
Really?
college. And that's another
I think
a
that's
stressful
probably
job
true.
too.
Yeah. So how do I mean, your skills sound pretty extraordinary. How do you pass those skills down to your employees? You got 400 human beings. How do you make sure that everybody's kind of on the same page around communication and listening, and especially listening to emotions and that sort of thing?
I think that's still a challenge for me. We're still working through that. Getting everybody on the same page. I recently had I think I was introduced to this other concept of when you get everybody to talk in a room, because I've heard that, you try to get everybody to be having a very inclusive conversation.
Right.
I've heard this technique where someone said you should have the least experienced person talk first, and then you have the most experienced person talk last. Because if you reverse it, if the most experienced person in the room talks first, everyone else shuts up.
Yep. And that's absolutely correct. And as a corollary to that, you want to make sure that all your introverts speak up, and you've got to know who they are, and you got to call them out.
Yeah.
So Karl,
Yeah, I've used that technique.
you're being
Yeah.
quiet over there. You're thinking a lot. You're a really bright guy. What's going on in your head right now? What's running space in your head around this idea?
Yes, I've used that technique.
And I make sure that protect the introverts because the extroverts will take over. And the idea of having the least experienced person speak first, I think that comes from the military. I think the military figured that one out. But it's a really good advice, really powerful. How would you describe the culture at Laserfiche?
How do I describe the culture? It's very open, and I feel it's very collaborative. Since I think I set a different tone to the company. I even though I have an office, I actually don't sit in my office. I sit outside in a cubicle right next to the hallway.
Really?
And so if you wanted to walk past, people say hi to me all the time. If I have to take a call, I would just jump into my office. But if I'm outside, and I would just work outside. And so I make myself really accessible. It's more than just open door. I'm really outside.
Really? So you have office of the CEO in your little cubicle, right?
I'm just sitting outside with
and how that doesn't disrupt your own workflow?
I currently what we have in our office is we run a hybrid work environment. We have 3 days in the office, 2 days at home. So certain things that I need alone time or private time, I move my schedule out to say certain things I do at home or at night, and then the things I do in the office. I don't put secret stuff on my screen when I'm out in the open.
Right. So what kinds of things do you hear from people as they're coming by and just chatting or just mentioning to you?
There are some chats, and some people want to share their successes. Some people want to share their problems, and some people do have problems, and I think it's more approachable. They're more willing to walk by, because they're walking by the hallway anyways. And if you say hi, people will be willing to share what kind of problems they have.
Are you able to learn things you probably otherwise wouldn't know about?
Yeah, I think if I hide in my office, there would be stuff that I wouldn't be even aware of.
And so it makes a difference for you to be available like that.
Yeah, I think it's two-way street. I get stuff out from them, and they get stuff out from me.
Interesting way of managing.
It's different. I think I have this certain connection because I have worked in a lot of different departments. And when they tell me about certain things, yes, I've done that work.
You understand it.
Yeah, I understand it.
What is it you think that gives you the most joy in the work that you do?
I think it's that transformation. It's like that Secret Santa job, that story. There's some really amazing stories that I've heard, with customer stories. That's just okay. I've transformed this. There's a customer, I believe that's in Ghana, in Africa, and they said that because we handle documents, and currently right now they can pull documents online and digitize. But before they did this, he told the story, says, if I wanted to find a document, I had to get a Jeep, I had to get an armed guard with a shotgun, I drive out into the wilderness, I get to the warehouse, and there I have to fight rats the size of small dogs.
Wow.
So they literally have paper that's stacked up in like cubes, and they tie like a little small ribbon, like a little small package. And that's how they're tied up together in like paper blocks. And they're just shoved on shelves like that. And that's how they were storing their paper. And of course, their paper is, I guess, edible by their rats. And that's what they're eating the documents.
Yeah, not to mention the humidity.
Yeah.
Rots the paper
So
really.
fighting picturing the guy saying, I'm fighting, rats the size of small dogs. And he says, now I don't have to do that. Wow, these, the lives of these people have changed. You talk about, accessing flight information through your iPad rather than through paper. And he said, yes, that's changed. But there are other people who's exactly the same thing. He can just say, oh, I'm accessing electronically, but instead of on paper. But his life has changed completely.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. And I imagine that sense of satisfaction you're talking about permeates the company. People realize they're transforming lives.
Yeah, the people, that is our mission, to actually transform lives and transform businesses by making software that people love to use.
Wow, good for you. I got one more question, I'll let you go. What's one thing about you that we would never know unless you revealed it to us?
What's one thing that people would not know about me, huh? Well, I'm learning Italian.
Well, there you go.
I picked it up because I started so I played this instrument, this Chinese instrument. And so I decided to say, let's see if I can play an Italian opera song. So I did that opera song. And then I said, maybe I could sing it. So I started learning the song without knowing any Italian at all. I learned to sing the song, and I thought, oh, this is so cool. And then I picked up another Italian opera song, and I learned that song. And I did like 3 or 4 songs, and I didn't speak a word of Italian. I have no idea what I'm saying, but I could sing the song. And it became a challenge for me to it became like a memory problem to say, can I sing this song without understanding without understanding Italian? And then eventually a couple of people said, you know what, you should start learning Italian. And then so I thought, okay, maybe. And then when I started, it became a little serious. And now I'm like 3 or 4 months into this.
So music, using a traditional Chinese, what was the traditional Chinese instrument you played?
It's a erhu.
Is that
it's an upright 2-stringed instrument.
Yep. I play violin. I play jazz.
Yeah, it's very violin. Yeah, when I was small, I played violin also, so it's similar.
Right. Well, I was going to say that many, many years ago, I played in a band, and one of my bandmates, who was an amazing mandolin player, played that instrument, and he played bluegrass with it.
Yeah. So that's what I was trying to do. I go, let me see if I can play Italian opera with this Chinese instrument. It was the same thing. And then once I got there, it became Italian, and then.
Amazing. Good for you. Well, thank you so much, Karl. It's been a wonderful conversation. You're doing great work, and I know that my audience is completely inspired by everything you had to say. Thanks again.
Okay. Thank you, Doug.